The time period that I chose for this video project is from about 1760 to 1766, and that has to do with colonial opposition to British authority, pretty much. Britain was, implementing a lot of policies, and, they issued, a variety of taxes in this 6-year period, and colonists, for the majority, not all, but many colonists were opposing this. And they went about that in a variety of ways. There were the violent outbursts. There were, people who were these tax collectors, British officials. They would be attacked, or the textbook in chapter 5 talks about they were forcing an official to drink this tea to oppose the Tea Act, and just all kinds of things. The Stamp Act Congress, which was more moderate, let's come together, let's put our heads together, think about this, where do we stand, which was less violent. But there were just all kinds of forms of opposition arising, from the colonists towards Britain, and Britain asserting this seemingly excessive authority over them in, affairs like how they traded and things like that. So, I guess to apply this to my own life, and if my life was submerged into this time period from 1760 to 1766, it's interesting to think about, because considering, okay, I have my mom, my dad, myself, and like my 2 younger sisters. For my younger sisters, because as we all know, it's usually the younger generation who has more liberal views, my sisters would probably grow up, thinking, we don't need to pay these taxes, we're Americans, whereas my parents would probably think, if they were first generation, if they were coming from Britain, and they migrated, they grew up in Britain, and now all of a sudden they're in America, and their king is making a rule, maybe they wouldn't oppose it. Maybe they would be loyalists, and they would say, well, this is our king, we may have moved over here, but if this is the policy, then we need to follow that. So maybe they would oppose, maybe they wouldn't. My sisters would probably, like I said, be that new generation of, we're not the king's, subjects. We're over here. I mean, like, maybe we're loyal to him, but we need more independence in these areas. Like, we need to be able to trade like we want to, and not have these extensive taxes, where the king just takes our money, because they wouldn't have that tie of loyalty to the king as the older people would, who spent more time in England as a subject to the king. So the artifact that I chose for this time period it's a teapot, and you may have seen it in the chapter. It's in chapter 5, it's page 137, and it's actually under this category where the header is Imperial Authority, Colonial Opposition from 1760 to 1766. And this teapot, it really shows how common this colonial opposition was, because we do understand nothing was unanimous. There were some people who opposed the taxes, and some people who didn't like the taxes, but they were still going to pay them because it's from King George, that's their king. And then there were colonists who were, let's think about this, let's group together, talk about where we stand, maybe we should petition the king. And then there were the groups that were like, this is ridiculous, let's attack an official. So there were all kinds of varying degrees, but if you apply it to the current time period, we have bumper stickers and stickers for our windshield, and hats and shirts, and all kinds of things to express our political views. And it's interesting because in the 1760s there was a teapot that said, well, the camera is going to refract the image, so it'll be backwards if I show it to you. But it's on page 137 of the textbook, and it says no Stamp Act. So it's an anti-Stamp Act teapot, and it was just a common household object, and people are like, they're so fervently opposing it that they put it on their teapot. My mom wouldn't want to put stuff on her teapot, that's her nice teapot. But families just were very fervent about this opinion and this opposition. They wanted, they were outraged by, the Stamp Act, and they didn't want to have to use this. Stamp Act specifically was Britain saying, you need to use this special watermarked paper from us for, all kinds of things, college degrees, certain mail, legal documents for specific things. Let me see what else. Just all kinds of things that colonists were like, no, we don't need to use all of it. For if you wanted to make a will, you had to use this special paper that was watermarked. Signing newspaper or signing customs documents, newspapers, certain licenses, even playing cards, and all of these things were taxed under the Stamp Act. And so colonists opposed it because why are they being taxed to pay off Britain's debts? They're not in Britain anymore. They're Americans. So we really see in this time period there's a transition, and the colonists are starting to get their own sense of identity as, we are not England, we are Americans. So there's starting to be a little bit of a divide, just some dissension between Britain and the British colonies in America. So that's definitely why this artifact was significant enough to be put in the textbook, because it shows that people were passionate in their division. They were divided, and they were very divided, and it led to the severing of a country, of a nation. So that's why I chose this. So that was what really stood out to me from chapter 5.